So how's everybody doing today? Thank you for being here. David W. Williams, also known as Diamond Dave. And what we're going to talk about today is taking black jobs in economic warfare. And the reason why I want to talk about this is because it's going to allow me to go back through some content I did, I want to say maybe over a year ago, where we were talking about economic warfare and how it was negatively impacting lower wage and semi-skilled and unskilled black workers, right? And I think President Trump in the debate kind of brought this issue back on the forefront. We know that President Trump likes to hammer the immigration argument really, really hard. That's kind of what he ran on the first time. So what he's going to run on now. And the reaction in social media and the reaction by a lot of black people to his, I would say, narrative around black jobs was very interesting, because what it's kind of doing is I believe that it's a group of people trying to escape this idea that many black people in this society are semi-skilled or they're unskilled. And as a result, right, not being the only reason, but as a result of that semi-skilled and unskilled status that they have in America, and also because of the caste system that we have inside the United States, there's been a cap on their income, which means that they're doing a quote unquote black job. Also was talking to somebody last night and had a really, really good conversation about this. We were talking about how historically black jobs or government jobs, you go to the DMV area, many of those people built their financial stability and their financial success in government jobs that they know they could get because they were black. And because the federal government has certain type of, I would say, entitlements they have to give to different groups, they knew they could get those jobs. If you look at the city of Atlanta, Atlanta initially was built by black people working in government, right? Being able to get stability through government jobs, what we also know as black jobs. Teachers, well, we consider those black jobs. Many black women working in the healthcare system. If you go down to South Florida, a lot of black women who are not what I would call black American women, but they are black women working in the medical system. Many black women working as CNAs, are those considered black jobs? So it's very interesting that, and this is kind of how the internet works, is everybody on the internet makes over six figures, right? They're doing very well. When you watch the dating shows, every woman wants a man that makes over six figures because she makes well over six figures. So she needs to make sure that the guy's on her level. And as a result, I think it kind of creates this narrative that these other black people don't exist. And the data very much shows us that they do exist, right? So that's what we're going to talk about. So the overarching theme of this particular video is taking black jobs in economic warfare, because I don't think that we've hammered that point enough. And I think until that segment of the population decides that they're going to actually accept the fact that they are involved in economic warfare, then how do they need to position their lives on multiple levels to be able to combat this economic warfare? I think they're always going to be a victim to what's going on. And I think I'm going to have to just stay there, because I think anything higher level from a customer awareness standpoint, until people can accept that persuasive argument that I'm trying to get them, all the higher level content won't even mean anything, because they haven't really accepted the fundamental argument and they haven't been able to look at their life and kind of understand that fundamental argument, right? So that's something we're going to talk about right now. So really quickly, the sponsor of the show is www.thehighestpaid.online. And some of the things that we're going to talk about, especially in the first segment of the show, is going to support this idea that I've had for a lot of years, is that many people are under a lot of income insecurity. They're under a lot of income stress. They don't necessarily understand how they can keep their income in line with inflation. I went to go get a car wash today. It was $11. Historically, it's been $8, but their costs have gone up, so they had to pass those costs on to me. And I believe that being able to go into the financial markets and understanding how to successfully trade could take some of that stress off those people. But that's a skill level, right? Now, we've been successful in teaching people how to develop that skill level and helping people expand their economic consciousness so they can go back into the market and go out into the world and function successfully because they understand those things. However, if you don't develop the skill level in something, you're going to keep facing the same situation. So you got to kind of look at yourself in the mirror and ask yourself, am I fine with the way my life looks, or do I actually want to do something about it? Because again, if you don't do something about it, it's just going to pass on to your children. So really quickly, to anybody that's a mod, we're going to let out-of-towners come in around the 20-minute mark, right? And what I mean by out-of-towners, I mean that people that are not already subscribed want to just make sure that we run the program like this. If somebody comes sideways, give them a timeout warning. If they come in sideways a second time, just get them up out of here. Because one of the challenges for this type of content is people come in on their own agenda and they're not really for what we're for, right? And one of the things that we want to do is to create a learning environment, is not just present the information, but also create an environment that allows people to learn. You got to do both at the same time, in my opinion. So to make sure that we keep that environment for people to learn, we got to keep a lot of the sideways stuff out of the environment, because we understand that people come in with no desire to learn. They just kind of have their own agenda, and that's cool, but they're going to have to do that somewhere else. So really quickly, let's go into the video in which Trump talks about black jobs that got a lot of people upset.
He caused inflation. As sure as you're sitting there, the fact is that his big kill on the black people is the millions of people that he's allowed to come in through the border. They're taking black jobs now, and it could be 18, it could be 19, and even 20 million people. They're taking black jobs, and they're taking Hispanic jobs, and you haven't seen it yet, but you're going to see something that's going to be the worst in our history.
Thank you. President Biden.
Okay, so he talked about that. A lot of people got upset. A lot of stuff on social media about I'm going to my black job. In reality, there are black jobs, right? I've worked in Orlando, Florida. I've worked labor pool before. I've worked temp jobs. The majority of people on those jobs at that time I was working them was black folks. I'm from Orlando, Florida. I'm from a county called Orange County, right? On the west side of Orange County, for a very long time, before I was born, but this existed, there was nothing but orange groves. You know who was out there picking those oranges? Black people. If you go down to Clewiston, Florida, you go down to Belgrade, Florida, where they got the sugar cane. You know who was picking that sugar cane at one time in Belgrade, Florida, and Clewiston, Florida, and also not as much Pahokee, but Belgrade and Clewiston was black folks. Now it's Mexicans, but at one time it was black people. If you go to where Adrian James is from, which is west of Miami, I forgot the name of it because it's a Native American name. I can't pronounce it. That's also an agricultural town, right? You know who historically was doing all the agricultural work in that particular area for a very long time, not even replaced by Latinos, was black folks. So there is such thing as a black job. And what we have to understand is that every black person has not been able to, I would say, move or use upward mobility to get out of these positions. Many of them were stuck right there. Now, what's interesting, and I talked to somebody about this, I want to say maybe Thursday or Friday, is that everybody got kind of riled up behind Trump saying this. What I wanted people to understand is that Dr. Claude Anderson has been telling black people this for almost 30 years. So I'm going to show you a video from the 90s in which Dr. Claude Anderson is talking about how immigration is going to be negative towards black people. And this is from like probably the mid to early 90s. He's been talking about this. And again, I think because people could not understand what he was saying, that's just my own opinion. I want to give people the benefit of the doubt. They didn't take heed to what he was saying in the real world. So you get a lot of Dr. Claude Anderson fans on the internet, but when you ask them what are they doing in the real world to support what he's saying, it's nothing. And so as a result, we're at this particular point where people were sent to us to give us warning around what was going on. And for some reason, we didn't take what they say serious. Let's go ahead and get into that.
Have an unending influx of immigrants into the country. And that's what Dr. Price is talking about. And nobody, no black politician, no black organization wants to deal with that issue. They will avoid it at all costs, even though in their hearts they know that's one of the biggest problems for black folk. We anticipate in the next 10 to 12 years, approximately 8 to 6 million Hispanics coming into the United States and 41 million Asians. You have been the majority minority for 400 years in this country. You have been the #2 population for 400 years. You're going to get kicked out of being #2. You're going to go down and become #4. Now, common sense, even a third grade education would tell you, if you didn't get anything when you were #2, yeah. You all jumped ahead of me, but anyway, you can guess what you're going to get when you become #4. And the worst part about it is as you descend and go down to #4, those other groups are going to go up. And as they go past you, you're going to have major racial clashes in this country. You're going to have fights all over this country between blacks and Hispanics, blacks and Asians, blacks and poor whites. And black folk cannot fight all these groups. Everybody can not always be against black folk.
Okay, so I wanted to show you Dr. Claude Anderson because he has been trying to communicate this to black audiences for, let's say, maybe 3 or 4 decades. And for some reason, it wasn't really taken serious. A lot of being black in this particular society, in my opinion, is what I would call black escapism, where black people often try to figure out how to not focus on what's in front of them and try to figure out, like, what can they do to avoid what is actually the real issue. But in talking about economic welfare, right, what I want to show you is the concept of that you're engaged in economic warfare. And what I mean by that is that you're in a system that's designed to strip you of your economic mobility. It's designed to strip you of your economic stability. And then you have factions or groups of people who also involved in the same thing, because this is a competitive system, right? So this is not a system where everybody's supposed to have everything. It's a system where groups are trying to figure out, how can we bring resources to our group? And we understand that means that other groups are going to get denied those resources, right? And so I did a video, I want to say maybe a year ago, where I talked about black workers in the Inland Empire and how they were being discriminated against by Latinos in the workplace. And these are what we would call black jobs. These are semi-skilled or unskilled labor positions. Now they have to compete with Latinos in the workplace for these jobs. And because of the way Latinos function, because they have the ability to organize around their language, they now work together to push black people out of those particular jobs because the job is a resource, right? There's too many people on the internet that are, I don't know for what reason, they're kind of falsifying their real life experience, right? This is the type of stuff that regular people are dealing with on a day-to-day basis. And so until they start realizing, okay, I'm involved in economic warfare, how can I build a faction to support me in this particular area? And then what do I need to do to support me and my faction? They're going to continue to fall victim to organized groups that understand what they're here. These people are coming to this country for an economic reason. I've talked about this before. They're coming to this country for an economic reason. So when they get over here, they understand how to function as an economic group to make sure that economics, and they also get policy to support them, but they understand how to use a policy that supports them to be an economic force, right? So when you go around Metro Atlanta, majority of the people that you're going to see doing construction are going to be Latinos. That used to be also a black job. You rarely now see black people doing construction. I used to live in Houston. There's an association called the American Minority Contractors Association, called AMAC. And in Cleveland, Ohio, AMAC is black people. You go down to Houston, AMAC is all Latinos. Now, Latinos are the majority of people in Houston, Texas, but they're also looking to get minority contracts because why? They're considered a minority by government. So they understand how to function as an economic faction and also tap into government policy to make sure that their group wins. And they're doing this in the real world. They're not doing this on the internet. So again, what we're trying to do here is taking that part of the population that is falling victim to this, and they know that there's something wrong and they're not getting any answers, and to try to get them to understand that this is what's going on and these are some of the things that you can do about it. I think the masses of people are just going to get washed away by this type of stuff because there's no political leadership in this particular area. I don't believe that there's any spiritual leadership in this particular area coming from their local area. And then there's no family leadership in these particular areas. And it's not a culture of our people to really form economic factions on a large scale, right? Everybody's on their own kind of like individual group, right? I'm my own person. I'm doing my own thing. And they think that makes them win. That works until you run into a group of people. And we're going to kind of talk about that. So here's an article, right? Let me get rid of this particular comment that I talked about, I want to say maybe over a year ago. We're going to go right back through it. So this is from the LA Times. In California's largest race bias case, Latino workers are accused of abusing black colleagues. This is from August 22nd, 2022. So in America's long history, harassment, discrimination against black workers has usually involved white perpetrators, and that remains the case today. But with the rapid growth of the Latino population, now at 19% in the US and 39% in California, Latinos form the majority in many low-wage workplaces. and instances of anti-Black bias and colorism. Among them is drawing new scrutiny, even as activists in the two communities forge alliances over criminal justice and econ development. The largest two racial bias cases brought by the federal government of California in the last decade allege widespread abuse of hundreds of Black employees at warehouses in the Inland Empire, the state's booming distribution hub for trade between the U.S. and Asia. There's a lot of Amazon warehouses out there, amongst other things. In interviews, Black employees said a torrent of racist insults and discriminatory treatment was mainly inflicted by Latino co-workers and supervisors who compose roughly 3/4 of the workforce at the sprawling facilities in the Ontario and Moreno Valley. So U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission lawsuits allege that supervisors at the global medical supplier Cardinal Health and at Ryder Integrated Logistics, a subsidiary of the trucking giant, routinely ignored harassment in Spanish and English at their Inland Empire warehouses. They gave Black employees the hardest manual jobs, denied them training and promotions, and failed to take action despite dozens of complaints, according to court filings and interviews. Many of the Black workers were hired through temp agencies. When they complained, both white and Latino managers retaliated by disciplining them or abruptly firing them, according to the EEOC. Others felt forced to quit because of the intolerable working conditions created by the hostile work environment, the lawsuits allege. Cardinal, Ryder, and other temp firms denied the accusations, but as scores of Black employees came forward and the EEOC interviewed witnesses, the company settled the cases last year rather than face jury trials. So nationwide EEOC shows that prejudice can afflict any race or ethnicity, but Black victims to predominate. So over the last decade, the agency has won settlements in 101 race discrimination suits, including Black workers, 59 for Latinos, 12 for Asian victims, and 6 involving white victims. So court filings, victims' allegations, and employer records show that in the last decade, about a third of anti-Black bias suits filed by the EEOC's Los Angeles and San Fran offices involved discrimination by Latinos, about a third involved white offenders, and a third were unspecific. So let's talk about the suit against Cardinal Health and Apple One. Since 2016, the EEOC claims Black workers were subjected to the N-word by co-workers and managers many times a day, including NB, lazy ass N, ain't did no work all day, and look at those N-looking monkeys working like slaves like they should be. So the first worker to file a complaint described being called anti-Black slurs in English and Spanish, facing prejudice from a Latino supervisor, and being deliberately run over with a cart by a Latino coworker, right? So here's one of the guys in the lawsuit, Mr. Lee Simmons. His backstory is he grew up in Compton. He had Mexican-American friends. Over the decades, at other jobs that he worked, he said Hispanics, whether they liked you or not, kept it to themselves. As for the few white workers at Cardinal Health, he never had a problem with them. So Apple One hired him to drive a cherry picker at Cardinal for $14 an hour. He found that Black workers were largely kept off the vehicles. These jobs were given to less experienced Latino workers, even when licensed Black workers were first in line. So Mr. Simmons is in his mid-50s. He was given a harder floor picker job for $12 an hour, on his feet, loading boxes inside the warehouse in 90-degree temps. So it was 6 days a week, 14 to 16 hours a day, including mandatory overtime. He saw Latino workers clocking out after 8 to 10 hours. When Black workers were asked to leave after 14 hours, they were threatened with termination. So Mr. Simmons claimed that a Latino supervisor would make him clean up the trash where everybody else was sent home. After 3 months of complaining, Simmons was allowed to drive a cherry picker, but his pay remained at $12 an hour, lower than other non-Black drivers. Let's keep going down to the article. So EEOC's lawsuit against Ryder and Kimco Staffing was similar to Cardinal Health and Apple One. So at Ryder's warehouses, Black employees were subjected to daily slurs such as the N-word, Aunt Jemima, negrafia, which means ugly Black woman, cochina, which means pig, and cucaracha, which means cockroach, according to the lawsuit. The black workers described restroom graffiti of a person hanging by a noose, and Latino supervisors will pull black workers off the production line to clean cracks in the floor. So in the wake of the suit, a Ryder investigation found that several Ryder and Chemical employees had used several anti-black, epithets, and the manager failed to report or document complaints. But the companies denied any widespread issues with discrimination, harassment, or retaliation. So this worker named Watkins said while working at Ryder, he heard slurs in English and Spanish during the 4 years. Hispanic workers had their own production lines. The black workers had to be on a different line, he claimed to the EEOC. So a former Ryder supervisor who's of Asian and Caucasian descent said 90% of assembly leads were Latino, and they would pick Latino workers to be on their lines, excluding black workers. Spanish was a dominant language in the warehouse, and Latinos were favored for promotions based on what Yamaguchi is claiming. Black workers were rarely given jobs that could lead to advancement, and some complained to him about being called monkey and boy by Latino colleagues. So in the videotape testimony, Watkins claimed Latino supervisors often wouldn't let black workers get water, take bathroom breaks. They would say, "You're big and black, you can keep working." Watkins sought to move from temporary to permanent status. My supervisors had me training new employees, and then I would see new Hispanic temps be promoted to permanent. They would not even consider me. Finally, he quit because he says he was not being treated like a human being. And so one more story, Regina McCorkle described at the end of each rider shift, employees would be placed on the following day's schedule. By the next morning, she and other black assembly workers will often find themselves dropped from the list. So excluded workers would line up on standby. You couldn't clock in. If there were 5 Hispanic blacks waiting and 10 blacks, they picked the Hispanics first. McCorkle complained to 6 Ryder and Chemical managers, all Latinos, about bias and slurs. One dismissed the behavior as part of the culture. So let's assume that what they're saying is true. To me, this is economic warfare to lock them out of these positions. What they want to do is make it so difficult that you quit, right? Now, Miss Mystique says, why would you continue to work there? Miss Mystique, I would ask you, what if those are the jobs that you can get based on your skill, training, and education? We're talking about people working in the temporary workspace doing warehouse work, what we call in Orlando light industrial. Therefore, when people don't have the skills, they don't have the education, they don't have the networks, they often have to take what they can get. But the question I want to ask, and I'm not talking about you personally, but what I want to ask is that, why does a person feel like they have to be subjected to this on their job? So does a person have a right to go to work and not be harassed? Or is that just something they have to accept? Right? However, the goal of what these people are doing, these Latinos, is that they want to make it so difficult that you just quit. So then as you quit, they bring in more Latinos, right? Because we're already talking about where at the workplace, they're already speaking Spanish on the work floor, right? So they want to make this job in these jobs in the Inland Empire, doing this light industrial work, doing this warehouse work, as an economic resource for their people. That's their goal. So these are black jobs, right? These are lower income, semi-skilled, unskilled positions. And so what we find is that we have a whole segment of the black population that doesn't work these type of jobs, that assumes that this type of work doesn't go on. And what I'm going to kind of show you with the education data and the income data is that a larger population of black people are in these positions than what we think, right? Because we know the internet is false. So everybody on the internet makes 6 figures or greater. Everybody got the best job. They live in their life, but the data is not showing any of that to be true. And so that's what I want people to understand. I'm trying to get people with this particular message at the bottom of the customer awareness pyramid. You're not even aware that you're involved in economic warfare. And nobody's telling you this. They're not telling it to you. They're telling you everything else. And what's going to happen, Dr. Claude Anderson talked about in the 90s, is they're going to keep coming over here. And because of the way in which they move as a faction and they understand how to move as an economic faction, they're going to push you out. That's their goal. Their goal is to push you out of these situations and to bring their people in. And you're going to be left by yourself because there is no government advocacy or no political advocacy to help you. You don't have the family support to help you. And you also don't have the group support to help you. And so that's what I want you to understand, right? So I think we're past the point of asking, how come they didn't go to another job? The question we want to start asking ourselves is, when will you accept that you're involved in economic warfare? Because if you go to another job and you still experience the same thing, now what do you do? So is the game to just keep jumping from job to job to job to job and hope that this is going to be the one job that why I don't get abused? Why not build up your group to where somebody tries you or tries to deal with you a certain type of way, there's going to be a repercussion back to them, right? That's the real work. Because one thing that we've done as Black people inside the United States is because we're dealing with an issue, we always start moving around. And what's going to happen is you're going to run out of places to move to unless you leave the United States. And many people are advocating for that. But then the question is, what happens when you deal with an issue over there? Now where you going to go? You're going to go to the moon? So you got to ask yourself, when are you going to get in a position to where you're going to accept that this is what it is? And I need to try to build strength around what I'm doing to put me and my people in a better position. And it's going to take some sacrifices. It's going to take me sometimes doing things that I don't want to do, unless you think you're just going to move from place to place to place to place based on how people are treating you. So now let's go into what we want to talk about. You're engaged in economic warfare. Another point, you don't want to be surplus labor in this system. The reason why these people can be done like this is because they're semi-skilled and unskilled. So because they're surplus labor, it doesn't really matter if they do the job or not, because it's very easy to get these jobs. They're what we call low barrier to entry jobs. They don't take a lot of education. They don't take a large amount of training, so you can get the job. And you don't want to be surplus labor in this system. And that's something I want people to understand. You don't want to put yourself in a position to where you can be easily replaced because what you bring to the table is not seen as very valuable, right? And so that's something I want to understand. The goal of other groups is to undermine your economic position. That's the goal of other groups. Okay, so it's the reason why when Latinos come over here, they organize around their language. They also organize around the specific Latino group that they are. But one thing you notice is they'll talk to each other and deal with each other on some level before they deal with you. So I'm from Central Florida. Colombians and Cubans really don't like each other. They really don't. They've literally gone to war in South Florida. But they'll deal with each other before they deal with you. Because one thing, they do have some commonalities around language. Caribbean Latinos really don't like Mexicans like that. They really don't. Right? But if it comes to an economic situation, they often will figure out a way to get to some type of common ground before they start dealing with non-Latinos. The goal of other ethnic groups is to undermine your economic position. And I said groups, I didn't say individuals. And so I think a lot of people, because they don't believe yet, right? Because they're trying to hide from the, what we call the situation, is how can I continue to operate in this world as an individual and hope that I can find a safe space to land? But in reality, the goal of other ethnic groups is to undermine your economic position, whatever your economic position is, because one person can't beat 5 people. So if you're somewhere and a group of people decide that we're going to get you out of here, it's going to be very difficult for you to be able to deal with that if you're all by yourself. Right? However, you don't have to believe me. You can just keep trying to operate as an individual in this particular world, and I hope it works out for you. But we live in a world that is dominated by groups of people. It's not dominated by one person. No matter how excellent, highly trained, highly skilled that person is, it's not dominated by one person. It's dominated by groups of people, right? Now we're going to talk about, is there such a thing as black jobs? Because we get a lot of kickback where there's a segment of people that don't want to identify with people that are unskilled, semi-skilled, and I get it. If you feel like I've elevated myself, I've put the work in to make sure I'm not in a particular position, that's cool. But in reality, though, based on income information, there's a lot of black people working quote unquote black jobs. Just based on the income that they bring in, just based on like median household income, based on household income over the years, there's a lot of people working quote unquote black jobs. And that's something I want people to really understand, right? People can hide from it. Again, everybody on the internet makes 6 figures or greater, right? You know, nobody's acceptable to them unless they're making $250,000 a year or higher. I get it. Like I get this is the internet world where people live the fantasy world. I get it. But out in the real world, we can find that a large segment of black people and white people don't even make over $50,000 a year. So here's something that we want to talk about. Let's get into these articles before we get out of here. So first I wanted to do is I wanted to kind of look at education. So this is a Journal of Blacks in Higher Education, right? So we talk about, this is from, what year is this from? This is from 2022. So there's about 7.9 million African Americans over the age of 25 in the United States who earned at least a bachelor's degree. Now, I don't have the methodology of this particular study. So I don't know if they're classifying like black people that weren't born inside the United States or their family is not actually from the United States where they don't have a lineage here. I don't know if they're classifying them as African Americans. However, in my opinion, that's going to be such a small percentage of the overall population, right? To where I don't think they can really skew it, but they can based on how they did this particular study, right? But they're saying that there's 28% of the total adult population inside the United States have a bachelor's degree. So if you break the data down by gender, we find that 24.9% of African-American men and then 30.8% of African-American women over the age of 25 have obtained at least a bachelor's degree. Now, when we get this type of data, everybody brings out their pom-poms and they start getting their cheerleading routine on because, it sounds good that black women have more bachelor's degrees than black men. What I want you to look at is look at the amount of black women and the amount of black men that don't have a bachelor's degree. So let's take the ones that got a bachelor's degree off the table. Let's look at the ones that don't have a bachelor's degree. So then the question is, we're looking at that percentage of the population over the age of 25 that does not have a bachelor's degree. What type of occupation or profession do you think they're involved in? Because we know they don't have a higher level degree, right? So they don't even have that. So what type of occupation do you think they're involved in? So we got 2/3 of the particular population, right, that we feel like don't even have a bachelor's degree. And we can show using a lot of studies that over the course of a person's lifetime, normally by having more education, they make more money, right? When you kind of adjust for other factors, normally by having more education, they make more money. Now, I know a lot of people are going to yell out the trades and, well, we got people in trades. Again, if you're in a highly skilled trade, historically, you would make more money. So how come that money doesn't show up on median household income, from my understanding? Because it should pass through. Now, maybe they didn't get captured in the study. Maybe they weren't part of the survey, but that's the question. So that's what we want to understand. So look at the amount of people that don't have the education. It's very similar to where I was with Dana and reached out to Dana with the data. She does a really, really good broadcast. And we were talking about black women in the Nielsen. And the Nielsen showed that like 40% or 30% of black women, right, make at least $40,000 a year. And, people bring out their cheerleading, they bring out their pom-poms, they do their little dancing routine. But then the question is, what about the 60%? How much money do they make? So once we extract the people that make the 40,000, what's the percentage of the population that don't make the 40,000 based on the Nielsen data? We never talk about that piece, right? Those people are largely ignored because who cares about them? They're on the lower end of the economic scale. But that's really the majority of the population. So when Trump is talking about black jobs, that's what he's talking about. Now, here's the larger question before we continue to get into these stats. I should have put this up. I just came to me. Why? So the question you want to ask is, why are black people competing with immigrants in 2024 for labor positions? Right? I think that should be the big question. Right? Why in 2024 do we have so many black people competing with immigrants in 2024 for labor positions? And I think when we answer that question, we can kind of understand where we're at, because that goes back to what Dr. Claude Anderson was talking about in the 90s. So you have to understand that in 2024, we have a large segment of our black population that is competing with immigrants, many of them illegal, for labor. So then the question is, where is the economic mobility over the past 10, 15, 20 years? Where has that gone? And what are the reasons why these particular people have not experienced that economic mobility? Because you will believe that by now, like we talk about the brother who's working as a cherry picker in the Inland Empire, right, in 2022. What were his parents doing for a living? What did they do? What did his parents' do for a living? So how come in 2022 in the Inland Empire, he's competing with Latinos for a cherry picker job? How come he has not been able to move out of that position? And so that's what we need to really look at. We're talking about black people whose family is from this country, who've been here an extended period of time, competing with people for work that just got over here. And I think that's the larger question that nobody wants to address. And they won't address it. They'll ignore it. They say it's not true. We'll get all the black professionals to come out and say they got a black job. We'll get people say, well, why don't they just go do something different? And the question you want to ask yourself is that, why are you competing with immigrants in 2024 for a labor position? Let me get back to it, because that just came to me that I need to talk about that. So now let's talk about Pew Research Center. Here is economic worries. Nearly 3 in 10 black adults say they worry daily or almost daily about paying their bills, the amount of debt they have, 29%, and be able to save enough for their retirement. Roughly 1/4 say the same about being able to buy enough food for themselves and their family. 24% are paying rent or mortgage. About 22% say they worry daily, almost daily, about the cost of healthcare for themselves and family. That's a big deal to me, no matter how much money you make. And among employed blacks, 18% worry about taking a pay cut due to reduced hours or demand for their work, and 15% worry about losing their job. Nearly half of black adults experience at least one of these economic worries on a daily or nearly daily basis. Just from Pew Research Center, survey U.S. adults conducted September 14th, 2023. And we got the link to that. You can go look at what was their methodology. How many people did they survey, and how did they go about putting this survey? Motley Fool put out a particular article, Finance in America. So let's talk about median income. Net worth by race. Black families had a median net worth of $44,000 a year. Right? However, people of color, so that includes black people with it, but also probably includes Asians and Hispanics, are more likely than white Americans to save over 10% of their income. I don't know if they broke down saving rates by ethnicity. Okay, black, up to 10%, 52%, over 10%, 49%, right? So black people, even though they have lower household income, they're very, very serious about saving money, even though they don't necessarily make the same amount of money or have the same amount of household income as other groups. So that's why the narrative about black people being frivolous spenders is really not true. I don't know who puts that type of stuff out, but there's a lot of anti-blackness, especially on social media. So they look to blame black people for everything, right? So black people, even though they have a lower median income, they're really, I would say, consistent and serious about saving money. But median household net worth by race, we see black being the green line, right? 95 through maybe 2006, 2007, it was over Hispanics. Then it was neck to neck. Now they're lower than Hispanics. So the question you want to ask yourself, if everybody has a trade and they're making so much money, if everybody has so much of a college degree, if everybody's making all this money, they 6 figures and they just living it up and, you know, they just got this balling lifestyle, how come we don't see that in median household income and we don't see that in net worth based on the studies that we're looking at? Right? Because I'm not seeing a pass through from the position that everybody claims they have to how much money they're actually bringing in. So are they getting paid less money because they're black, or do they just not have those positions? Right? Let's keep going. Median household income. This is from Statista, right? We have black as the gray line. So from 1967, right, median household income based on this particular study, blacks was always the lowest group. We have it now at 53,500 and median household income from 1967 to 2022. So that's really relatively recent because it's in 2022. So again, how come we're not getting a pass through from all these people talking about they're so highly skilled, they have so much of an education, yada, 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 but we're not getting this a pass through median household income. So to me, this represents that many black people have black jobs. They're semi-skilled, they're unskilled, and as a result, because of their position in this particular economy, they work a lower paying job. And so therefore, they're going to be the most vulnerable to these immigration changes. They're going to be the most vulnerable to these demographic changes because there's surplus labor in this economy. So as a result, they can be moved in and out of the employment situation because it doesn't matter what they do. I've had those type of jobs. It didn't matter whether I showed up or somebody else showed up. It just mattered that somebody was there to do the job, right? That's all that mattered. And so what I had to do was educate myself, skill myself up to where I could put myself in a position to where me being there actually mattered. And even then you're going to have issues, but you really have an issue, in my opinion, in this society, if you're black, because this society has a history of discrimination against black folks, and you're unskilled. You're going to be under a lot of stress, right? And so again, the question we want to ask ourselves again is, why are black people competing with immigrants in 2024 for labor positions? How come the 2/3 of the black people, right, or the black people that are doing 40,000 or 50,000 or less median household income, which is nothing to be ashamed of, but how come they're still competing with these people for these positions? Right? And so that's why I stress to people that a lot of these people that's in your face, they only benefit by entertaining you. They only benefit by distracting you from what's really going on. And that's how they benefit individually. And you really get no benefit from it. You get entertained and that's it. And they go back to their life. And if they win at that particular position, they get an economic benefit and you get no economic benefit, because nobody wants to talk about these particular type of things, right? So that's pretty much going to be it. Not going to be here long. Hopefully I laid this out in a way that makes sense. It's a lot of information. Hopefully it wasn't too, I would say, all over the place. But I want really people to understand first, you're engaged in economic warfare. And to me, we're seeing it to where in 2024, we have millions of black people inside the United States, for whatever reason, are competing for employment with people that just got over here. And it's multiple factors. There's government policy that these people are getting, right? They're getting a lot of times being put at the front of the line. And also, people do not have the skills and the education to separate themselves in the workplace to where they're not having to compete with these people for employment. And I think that's very, very unfortunate. So those are the people that have the black jobs. We look at the people in the healthcare space. You know, a large percentage of black women are CNAs. Those are black jobs. Now, anytime some black woman gets on the internet, we know she's like a nurse prac. I get it. But many of these black women in the real world, because I worked in healthcare, they're CNAs, right? Especially working in the ALFs, especially working in the senior facilities, they're primarily black women. Now you're starting to get a lot of Asian women coming into these spaces, especially Filipinos, people like that, right? But historically, that's what you would see working. I'm from a city to where you would see all the domestics from one particular part of our city going to the west side every day when they got off work. All those people working domestic were black women. They had on their domestic uniform. They was working in these Anglos houses, and those are black jobs, right? When I was coming up, the majority of people doing housekeeping at those hotels was black women, right? The majority of people doing housekeeping, now they're Latinos. But when I was a kid, all the women working in the tourism industry in my city, doing housekeeping positions, right, was Black women. The majority of the men doing what we call the janitorial and doing what we call like the repair around the hotels, those was all Black men. Now those are all Latinos. You see what I'm saying? So for some reason, that segment of the population never gets any kind of representation because we know everybody on the internet is rich. And that's cool. I understand people got to put on that face. But what I want you to understand is that this stuff is real. Because when I go back to the city that I'm from and I stay at a hotel, pretty much outside of the people working the front desk, everybody's Latino, right? Rosen is one of the few people that will hire Black folks. He hires a lot of Haitians, but all the rest of them hotel firms, it's going to be Black folk. It's going to be Latinos working throughout the hotel. It is what it is, right? I even saw Latinos working in a hotel in Gastonia, North Carolina, right? You go to North Orange County, which is Apopka, all the people working in agriculture, especially working in the fern industry, they all Latinos, right? No more orange groves, so nobody can do that type of work. But we're seeing that you go to Plant City, where all the strawberries are grown, all Latinos, right? All Latinos working in agriculture out there. So you got to realize is that you really want to make sure that you don't get stuck to where, because you don't really have a certain skill level, you don't have a certain education that people value, you get stuck in an economic position. And as things start to move around you, you can't figure out how to get out, right? Because if you don't have, just leaving the job and going to another workplace and dealing with the same situation, to me, you haven't done anything. I want to try to get you to understand you're engaged in economic warfare. You got to do the work to build really, really good factions around you, but get people around you. They have the same perspective on this particular world, and we're willing to help each other solve this particular problem. Let me put the link up. Anybody want to come in with any comments, any kind of disagreements, let me know, and then we're going to get up on out of here. Okay, so the link is pinned in the chat. I'm going to read these comments. Anybody want to come in, let me know. So Mr. Leo, man, I appreciate it. Ray Gun, man, appreciate it being a mod. Dr. K, appreciate it y'all being a mod and making sure y'all keeping things organized for me while I'm trying to do my presentation. I really, really appreciate it. Donald Watts, man, I appreciate the $49.99 super sticker. So Caddy Williams going to be the sponsor of the show. I appreciate the $50 super sticker. So you're one of the best at these topics. You forced me to think about my own situation. I started trading Forex 3 years ago. Big up to Forex. I'm finally profitable my third year. Love your content. Keep doing your thing. I keep watching. Peace and love. So big up to you, Mr. Williams, sticking to the Forex side, learning your situation and getting profitable. Big up to you. Self-made, man. I appreciate the $5. America has always been involved in economic warfare. Immigration is nothing new. Documented about the same thing with the Cubans in the 80s, most definitely. OB, appreciate $2 super chat. Great data cutting through the internet noise. Try to do my best. Had a lot of help. Dr. Kayla helped me assemble a lot of this information. She's an expert researcher. And so I just try to present it with a way in which it wouldn't be too confusing, because sometimes I feel like I'm throwing a lot of stuff at people at the same time. So sometimes it may be best just to take one piece of information and just talk about that. But I'm glad you was able to get something from it. So let me go back to Mr. Williams, a sponsor of the show, and bring up Mr. Philippe. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
How you doing?
How are you doing, sir? I just came up to thank you, Diamond Dave. The presentations that you make on a regular basis are some of the best stuff that we have on the internet. And this topic in particular was so on point. And I just wanted to come up and thank you for the hard work that you put in, making these presentations and putting the data and just doing an excellent job every time. I appreciate you.
I appreciate it. And it's not just me. I have people around me that help me out. They send me stuff that's helpful to me. And they also help me generate like an idea and a perspective of what I want to do. So it's not a one-man show. I do have like I said, I do have a faction around me that helps me do this, because I couldn't do this all by myself. So, but I'm glad you're getting some value from it, because the goal that we talked about before is just get people to kind of understand that this is the reality around them. Because for so long, I think the goal has been to distract us from what's going on. And then we end up in dire straits, and then nobody will come help us, or they gaslight us and tell us that this is not going on.
Yeah, and let me thank your team, and also one of your friends in arms, Erica Williams, does an excellent job as well. I wanted to mention, and the perspective that I'm coming from, and why I think this is so important and under talked about. I'm a Black lawyer. I've been a Black lawyer for over 15 years.
Okay.
And one of the issues that I see consistently, because very often a lot of my friends are other Black lawyers, or they are Black small business owners and so on. And the issues that are discussed are exactly the things that you're talking about. But specifically, one of the things from the Black business side is the frustration that a lot of my friends have in finding people amongst our people, young people, that they can hire and that bring value to their businesses.
Okay.
And in my view, a lot of that has to do with somewhere along the path from the 1970s, our families became focused on creating employees and not creating businesses. And so our big goal was to go work for a big corporation that is not developed by us and not financed by us, but that we have a big title and a name. And what came out of that was that we have a cadre of young people now that are unfocused on the basics of how to be a good employee. And I hear it over and over and over again. At the same time, from the professional side, whether you're talking about Black doctors or Black lawyers or Black accountants or MBAs, we don't have a solid Black client base. So what we're winding up doing is having to compete with the other groups for their businesses that they create. And that's a huge problem, because therein you're fighting upstream against people that have more of an interest in going amongst their own group.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to throw that out there and let you respond.
I mean, I understand what you're saying, and I've seen a lot of people, especially in the service side, but especially doing like professional services like what you provide, make that same issue where it's hard to find a population of people that will do business with you, because other groups, the way they do business is very insular. So they're looking to do business with their people first, and then if they can't meet that need or that can't get met, then they go outside of their group. And so I can understand your frustration. I've known other people that have the same situation. I mean, to be real with you, I was trying to do a particular service-based business, and I saw people getting larger accounts than me, and I knew they weren't better than me, but I could not network myself to those larger accounts. I just couldn't figure out how to do it. And I was locked out of larger accounts for a lot of different reasons, but within my own group, they did not have the ability to provide me the larger accounts I could use to try to raise my profile in the space. So I was kind of stuck at a certain level, and I just couldn't figure out how to solve that problem. And so it just was what it was.
No, that's 100%. And that's kind of the core of this, is the lack of economic institutions to help us scale beyond where our level may be. And another part of that, if I may say, is there's a mentality, unfortunately, in our community where people want the homie hookup, the I know you're providing a professional service, but I need you to discount me 20, 30, 40, sometimes free to get professional services. And so what winds up happening is, in many cases, and I'm only going to speak for myself, when I wind up doing stuff on behalf of members of our community, I wind up more or less doing it pro bono or at such a discounted rate that it pisses my wife off. Why I'm doing this when we have bills to pay? And so it's systemic, but it also has to do with a cultural thing that we've got to address about professionalism and business ethics and etiquette, where we are expecting to give our best and give excellence, and that people pay fair market value for that work.
I agree. Well, so I appreciate it, Mr. Philippe. Let me get to the next person, and I appreciate you coming up, and I appreciate all the support you're giving over the time.
Thank you for your time, sir.
Yes, sir. Take it easy. So, Ty, your device is showing it's not connected. So I'm gonna let you get that together, and I'm gonna bring Miss Cherie on. How you doing?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Hello. First of all, I want to thank you for just like echoing what everyone else says. You are the best at these topics. And I wanted to bring up something else. In the article that you showed earlier about the woman, it mentioned that she was a mother of 7 children.
Okay.
And it got me to thinking about generational wealth, because we tend to throw this generational wealth phrase out a lot. And I had written in the chat earlier that, yes, there's economic warfare with regards to the current unskilled and low skilled jobs, but there's also economic warfare with regards to their children in the same classes as our children. And no, we can't blame it all on their children versus our children, because we don't do as much homework as other groups. But there are a lot of resources that are moved from our children to Latino children because they usually speak English as a second language and things like that. So now you have, for example, this mother in the article that you showed, in that generational poverty is being reinforced as well with her children, potentially. I mean, like, I don't know her children, but I'm just saying what's most likely going to be happening as well. So I just want to bring that up and kind of add that to your conversation that you're having this evening.
So, I mean, what do you think could be done about that? Because she already has 7 children.
I mean, outside of her setting those children up in some sort of way, number one, to make sure they can read at an 8th grade level, and number two, to get them some sort of certifications or trade, like Erica is always talking about, if they can become plumber, HVAC, some sort of tech cert, becoming good at tech sales or something like that. I say this on my channel all the time, I don't know how else you're going to do it. To live the American dream, just to buy a house these days, it was shown on CNBC that you have to make $114,000 as a household. And most Black families don't have that. So there are resources, but she's going to have to, we talked about this on my channel as well. Some of the Black mothers have been saying that they have to fight for the resources for their children. And unless you're a Black mom who's going to fight and go in there and really like look for the information and bust down doors, I don't know how you do it. So I just want to say the economic warfare is also not just like us as a 40-year-old Black women, but also our children as well.
I understand. Okay. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dave.
Yes, ma'am. How you doing? So Ty, you on? You can hear me?
Yeah, am I audible?
Yeah, I can hear you. What's going on?
All right. Hey, Dave. Just definitely echoing the previous comments. This was definitely the most intelligent response to this whole concept of Black jobs. So, of course, thank you for breaking it down the way you always do. I wanted to answer your question. Why are Black people competing against immigrants in 2024?
Yes, ma'am.
That's obvious. I don't want to be stereotypical, but en masse, we're distracted by the wrong things. and our families have not set us up to succeed en masse with the changing times. So we spend our time talking about music battles and drama and 50-50 conversations, which is just entertainment for the time being, but they have no long-term benefit. But I really do wonder how much of our current status in America does have to do with discrimination that is inherent in this country, and how much is really the fact that our families just haven't set us up correctly. That's a question that I do ponder. So,
Understand. So, I mean, what do you think the breakdown is?
It's so easy to say, yeah, we need to do better, but you said it. This country is built off the backs of something of an oppression that has set us back in ways that are not able to be enumerated. Right? I don't want to discredit that, but I do think now that we're in this information age and we do have access to knowledge and ways of making money. I do think a lot of it is the families and the communities. We're just not focused on bettering our lineage and keeping the train going. So here we are, and we just competing as if we all just got here. So it's a hard thing to answer because it's an uncomfortable answer, right? We always want to go to the default of, well, we've been oppressed, so we didn't have that head start our counterparts had. So I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, I think it depends on how you look at it. So I do think a lot of discrimination, I think, is baked into this society. So let me explain something. And this is something I've talked about with Erica when she first started allowing me on her channel. To me, I see the United States as like the NFL. And the way that, are you familiar with the NFL? I don't know if you watch any football at all.
Just generally.
Okay, so the NFL is set up with 30-something odd teams. At the end of the year, one team wins the Super Bowl. So they're the winner of the whole NFL. Also, at the end of the year, somebody's at the bottom of the NFL. So the NFL doesn't work if there's not a bottom. And so what I think that this country has been set up to where Black people are going to be the bottom of this particular economic system. I think that's baked into our society as a group. So it will allow individuals to escape, but the group will stay at the bottom. So we talked about economic mobility and upward mobility with Black people. We do have a segment of our Black population, we could say almost 1/3. They're doing relatively well for themselves, right? The problem is the other 2/3 are doing really, really bad. And something I was talking to about somebody last night is because there's really not a lot of Black people inside the United States. Do we have enough Black people that are doing well, that have the right mindset to where we can now impact change and build an economic faction for our group, right? And try to make sure that everybody's not ending up at the bottom of the society. So I think the way the United States works is it says we'll pick off individual Black people and we'll give them a deal the way they don't have to be at the bottom, but the group, the large majority of their people are going to be at the bottom because some of the government set-asides for these people that are recently arriving, Black people never got those set-asides. Like they're making it they're really accommodating a lot of these people that are just coming to the United States. And Black people are never able to get those type of set-asides. And if they did, everybody act like it was the worst thing in the world. So we had that whole argument about DEI and Black people being unqualified. There is no argument that they have programs right now for people that just recently arrived in this country to get houses. There's no discussion about that from the right wing or these conservative thought points, but they have actual programs right now in the United States for people that have just recently arrived in the United States to not only get houses, but also to get their fast track to immigration or fast track to citizenship status. So I think because I believe personally that that's how this particular system is set up. Once I know that, then the question is, what do I need to do with my faction to make sure that we don't end up at the bottom of the society? Because I believe that the United States wants me and my family to be the Cleveland Browns. Since you're not familiar with the football, Cleveland Browns historically are going to be one of the worst teams in the NFL every year, right? But somebody has to be the worst team in the NFL for somebody to be the best team in the NFL. The NFL doesn't work the way everybody wins a championship. That's not how it works. Somebody has to lose. So one thing about sports teaches you zero-sum games, right? To me, we're in a system that plays a lot of zero-sum games, but we haven't taught people how to operate in a zero-sum game.
That's well said. And as sad as it is, as you said, Dave, it's almost like we have no choice but to look out for ourselves and our respective, like you said, our factions, our families, because collectively, like with the clip you showed with Dr. Claude Anderson, collectively we just can't get it together.
Yeah, but so what we're saying is, so collectively, from my understanding, means group.
Mm-hmm.
So I never believe that the total population of Black people will do anything. My question is, how can I get enough? So like what I do in the trading space, my goal is to get enough people in that space to where it can be beneficial to them and their family, because historically we weren't putting any people in the space. Right? So Caddy Williams now, who sponsored the show, now that he understands the Forex market, he now has the ability to expand his understanding of the whole economic system. Now he can turn around and teach that to his family. That's the goal, because historically we were putting no people in the space. I don't want to put every Black person in the space. Every Black person don't want to be in the space. My goal is, how can I get enough people in the space to where it can have a positive impact? Because now we can have higher level economic conversations where historically they can have no economic conversation. So when we use the term collectively, to me, collectively, based on my definition, means group. So if it's me and 3 other people, that's a collective effort. It will never be every Black person inside the United States, because some Black people just don't like me. So I'm not going to be able to get them to go along with me anyway.
Right.
Yes, ma'am.
That's good, Dave. That's real good. And I just want to say one more thing about that. Like you said, we can only put so many on, quote unquote. And, not everybody can be put on. But then I think the other problem about that is some Blacks, I hate sounding very stereotypical, but hey, whatever. We don't want to be, it's like, oh no, we got to one up each other. We too worried about people, our own, quote unquote, our own people stealing from us and one upping us, that we don't want the handout, or I'm going to do my own thing. And you know what I'm saying? So like you said, the larger group of all Black people, they have these inherent biases that I'm like, that will, forever keep them, permanently underclass, because we're worried about the wrong things. So, but I
understand. I agree with you. So I appreciate it. You got anything else before we close out?
No, that's it. Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am. Talk to you later. Mr. Watts, what's going on?
Hey, Dave, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How about you?
Pretty good, pretty good. So I had a couple comments I wanted to make.
Yes, sir.
One of them was related to when you were talking about skilled labor, and then you mentioned education, which it brought up some things that I actually realized when I actually went to college and got my undergrad.
Okay.
So I knew college was expensive, because initially when I started paying and I was going distance, I had to pay more money than people who were actually in the classroom. But I didn't understand that the reason why it was expensive for people, especially these younger people that are going, is because they're actually trying to live off the money. So that's a problem that I noticed that's keeping us consistently in a hole for the people that are going, male and female. So the second problem I'm starting to see is like people, I'm not going to say they're going for certain degrees, because I don't think the degree matters. People aren't really going with a purpose in mind, i.e., people aren't being taught to go look at the job outlook to see what type of skills and roles are going to be needed, what their pay is in the future, and using that to determine, based on what their interest, but mostly what's going to pay off better, which field you should go into. So those are 2 major problems that I see. And I think that stems from, I think you mentioned at one point, you might have called it home economics, or people weren't really taught to, or taught or trained on how to financially look at the situation that you're going in relation to college, buying cars, and so on and so forth, managing actual money. So those are some of the major problems that I see that are kind of holding us down. And the realization that this has brought me to is that a degree does not equate to skilled labor, because I know so many people who got degrees, even in these science fields. They'll go do something like they'll go work in a lab for a year and decide they're tired of it and go be a bottle girl. Like I know a couple of those right now.
I feel you. So When you say a degree don't equal skilled labor, what do you mean?
Because you can get a degree and still not be skilled, in my opinion. Because a lot of people, it's easier to get college degrees now. It's so easy that you can do your work and go and not really have retained enough to be able to work at whatever level that you should be able to in your degree. For example, if you get, like, I have a business degree, management. I've
Okay.
taken a lot of, supply chain, of course, the operations management, econ at different levels. But if I just did just enough, and then I tried to go take one of those roles, well, they actually expect me to know something.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
So I'm not skilled. I just have a degree.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. So you're saying, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. So I would say people need to make sure that they go get a degree or they go get the training that relates to actual skills as opposed to just having a degree.
Exactly. And
I
too
feel
many
you.
people are just completing it just to complete it.
Yeah, I feel you. I mean, I just think, especially in the colleges are like expert marketers. They're probably some of the best marketers inside the world. And they get 18 plus years to market to somebody. And so I think at the end of those 18 years, they've taken somebody through the whole customer awareness cycle. So by the end of those 18 years, a person believes I need to go to college because they've been marketed to. Like, if I had 18 years to market to people, I'd be making so much money. It's ridiculous. I just don't have 18 consistent years to market, right? So I just think colleges have really indoctrinated people to think that they need college, but not necessarily educated people on what they should be going to college for. And here's something, and I don't want to sidetrack the conversation, but I think many Black people have neglected the idea, and you kind of maybe touched on this, but I'm going to say it. Going to school to get something that's extremely highly skilled, but very much in demand. And when I
Yeah.
look at other immigrant groups, especially what they call East Asians, which I always thought was Indians, you see them fall into like cardiology. You see them, especially in the Atlanta area, a lot of female Indians or optometrists, pretty much like a lot of them that couldn't go to like higher level medical spaces, but they go into optometry because it's very much in demand. They fall into these medical professions that are very highly skilled, but also very much in demand, which means that they'll always get work because cardiology, you're never going to run out of jobs, right? Now, they're very hard programs to get into, but if you can get into the program and get out, you're going to have employment to the day you pass away. And I just think for some people, the desire to go to college is that strong. And often, again, another piece is they don't have the primary education. So maybe they're not a good candidate for those type of fields to where they maybe just go to college just to say they got a college degree. And then as a result, they come out with a degree, but they don't have a really in-demand skill set.
Yeah, and with that, another thing that I wasn't going to touch on, but I guess I will now. It intensifies the underlying fear that we already have from generations past. So when I mean underlying fear, partly the fear of the unknown, but these spaces that you're talking about, the things that Erica talks about, women in Linux, to like the areas they're telling you to go into, to go focus on or to consider because this will better your life. People don't have experience there, and they honestly don't believe that they should be there. And then there is a subset of Black people, in my opinion, that subconsciously believe that if we actually get too many of us get up there and we compete with them on a certain level, then they will retaliate with against us with violence, and they're actually afraid of that.
I feel you. All right, Donna. So I appreciate it, man. Let me go to the next person. I appreciate you coming through with the commentary.
Thanks for having me.
I mean, be easy. Caddy, what's up with it?
Hey, how you doing, man?
How you feel?
I'm good. Thank you so much for everything you do. I really wish I could do something for you, man. I mean it. And thank you to Erica Williams if she's listening. Erica Williams is the reason I even found you, man. You are a blessing. You really don't know it, but you out here changing people's lives.
Yeah,
I don't
Erica,
know. I mean,
Erica the blessing though, because if it weren't for Erica, you never found me. So she the blessing. So
yeah,
we gotta always
yeah.
hype up. Exactly. We gotta always hype up because I don't get a lot of push on YouTube. So most people I talk to say how you found me is through Erica. So she the blessing, she the connector. So she put me in the game. So we got to make sure we give her big up.
Yeah, so true. I gotta get us sister flowers, man. That sister is she's a blessing. She really is. And just listening to you, when I first heard of you, I was always on the fence about trading, but I finally decided to get my feet wet, and I got out there scared, not knowing. Then I got my first course, still bumping my head along the way. You know how it is in the beginning.
Yeah.
Took another course, and that helped get me along, give me a little bit more motivation. But you were really the reason I just kept going, because a brother like you, listening to the stuff you talked about, I was just like, dang, yo, you really forced me to go deep within and have a real conversation with myself. Like, I really had to answer some tough questions because of you, man. And I'm just thankful. And now I have a skill I could teach my son and my daughter. They're not born yet, but when they come into this reality, I promise you, they're gonna be millionaire traders. My son and my daughter, they're gonna be up. we gonna be up. I'm gonna be teaching them at a young age. It's, they're gonna learn the game, and they're gonna be set. And I'm gonna teach them to work together, because I never really had nobody the way you explained it, group economics, man. I really never thought about it until I remember hearing about Claude Anderson, but it does make a lot of sense. Like, we're really out here on our own, and like you say, economic warfare is a very real thing, and I don't think we don't look at it serious enough. I don't know why, but I really think that we gotta get serious about this, because it sucks losing, being last place. That really sucks. It really sucks, and nobody's gonna take you serious when you're the loser. So again, thank you. I want to thank you as much. I will always give thanks to you, and for whatever cause or whatever project you decide to do later in the future, just put it out there in the ether. I'll get it, and you got my vote, you got my support, whatever it is, I got you.
All right, man. I appreciate it, man. And just stay on that Forex, man. Keep doing what you're doing, because there's a lot of money in that market. And so I look forward to you printing money, because I know a woman that's in that space, and she was a Papa Do's waitress, and she taught herself the Forex game, and she easily pulling out, let's say, probably 300-400 every quarter. Like easily. And so
I'm a truck driver.
Exactly. So the bread is there. Just make sure you like you say, you keep learning, you manage your risk, you understand who your counterparties are. But it's so much money in that space, man. It's ridiculous, because that space really is bigger than the stock market. A lot of people don't know. And I just want to encourage you, man, just keep doing your thing. And like I said, now that you got the game, you can now give it to the people around you, and y'all can just keep pushing. Yeah,
man. I got it. Like you said, I am a truck driver still, but it wasn't until this year it really started hitting. And now I'm like, oh shit. Now I'm like, I'm up. And I'm like, okay, what do I do? Don't panic. You know how you get really excited? You just don't know what to do. You can't contain yourself. It's like, I'm in that moment, like, shit is good. And I'm just like, damn, it's always been this clear. But I was just, we bring our own level of thinking. We sabotage ourselves. I don't know why, it's the psychology, so I had to work on that. I really had to work on that, but I got it. I finally got the message. Okay. And thank you again. Thank you for everything you're doing, man. But don't stop doing what you do, big bro. Don't stop. Please don't stop.
Okay, man. I really appreciate the encouragement, man. So take it easy, man. And appreciate you coming through. We'll talk later.
All right, man. Peace and love.
Peace. Independent POV, what's up with it? Independent POV going once.
Hello?
Going twice. Yeah, you can hear me?
Hello? Yes.
Okay, what's going on, man?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. What's up?
Oh, thank you. I'm doing fine. First of all, I appreciate your content. It is
okay, so independent POV, man, we having some audio issues. What I want you to do is try to get your audio together, man. We'll get back up. Thomas, what's going on, man?
Hey, long time no talk, DD.
Yeah, you doing all right? I ain't talked to you in a minute.
Yeah. Just been watching the markets, and I've been learning TikTok, and I actually had my family here listening to you while I was eating breakfast and dinner. And
Okay.
like, yeah, he's insightful.
Appreciate it.
I was gonna say that, a long time ago, a year and a half ago, I was telling people that immigration was actually going to be the key to this bull market,
Okay.
with the earnings. And I believe that's going to continue for quite some time. Um, uh, that's all I really was thinking.
So you believe immigration is going to be key to the bull market?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I've seen a lot of studies are showing that a lot of the new growth in workers is going to be brought about by immigration to try to replace a lot of the boomers that are going to be going to be leaving the planet because they're going to be declining from age. So a lot of the new growth in workers is really going to be coming from immigrants, and we know those people are going to be buyers of consumer goods. So I just think a lot of corporations are depending upon that labor pool to come in and kind of support their revenue statements.
Yes, sir. I'm a trucker,
Yeah.
and I've been seeing what you're talking about firsthand at all of these grocery stores, all of these chain warehouses, like
Yeah.
all these Walmart, Myers, Amazon. What I'm seeing is that they're bringing in all these Spanish speakers,
Yeah.
and I'm seeing less and less Americans. Whereas when I first started trucking, the management would be white. Maybe you would have a few minority,
Yeah.
one of us. But now you're seeing Spanish speaking management and shift leads, and you're seeing maybe one, if not maybe one or two white or black people lumping the trucks. You know what I'm saying? And I think you're hitting it dead on the head what's happening. And I've been telling people that if you don't learn Spanish, I believe we have to learn Spanish.
Okay.
We have to learn Spanish. If we do not learn Spanish, then I believe you're going to be replaced. If you're in a higher position, I believe that you're in trouble, because if someone can do the same job as you, know just as much as you know, plus they can communicate with the immigrants coming in, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But I also believe there's an opportunity there. I believe that if you can speak Spanish, well, I believe that's an unexplored area as of right now. Like in trucking, for example, if you can speak Spanish, that's a whole nother freight market, right? If you're in real estate and you can speak Spanish, that's a whole other set of families, and I believe that while some Spanish speakers won't like you speaking their language, a lot of them will actually be impressed. Like every time I speak some Spanish, like I just used Spanish today to get some tape from my neighbor, my parents' neighbors. And, I asked them, did they speak English? They said no. So I broke out into Spanish and they smiled, and, so I believe it's in our best interest to learn their language so that that's no longer a barrier. We need to remove that barrier because it gives them an excuse for why we can't, quote unquote, do their job, or why we can't, quote unquote, manage them. You know what I'm saying? The more barriers you remove, the more opportunities we have.
I feel you.
Unless excuses we give them.
I feel you. So let me ask you a question though, and I like what you're saying, because one thing about, if you know about the South Florida area, it can be very difficult to get a job in there if you're not bilingual, right?
Right.
But let me ask you a question. Do you have any apprehension about being forced to speak a foreign language inside the United States to maintain employment?
It's not what we like to do. It's what we have to do.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? And you was talking about group economics and group activity and group empowerment. Well, truth of the matter is that they're coming over here. You know, I personally believe that the powers that be is opening up our borders so that they can remain in power through numbers. Okay, because if they give them quote unquote citizenship, right, that gives them reasons to earn their vote. So if they earn their vote, they stay in power, right?
Okay.
So I believe that it's not about how we feel. It is what it is.
Yeah.
Either do or don't.
I feel you. Okay. So I appreciate it, man. So thank you for the commentary, man. Take care of yourself, man. Stay safe.
Yes, sir.
All right. Be easy. Okay. So that's going to be it. Miss Candy Skin, appreciate the $5. So appreciate everybody for coming through. Hope you got some value from it. Y'all stay up, man. Talk to y'all later.